Blessings to one and all, and welcome to the Infinite Journey podcast. I'm Paul James Caden, and in today's show, we are going to be talking about hate, the energy that decays everything it touches. But folks, this conversation I think goes a little bit beyond hatred because any negative emotion can be harmful or decaying to the human being, their soul, their psyche, their mental health, their physical health, and even the circumstances around them. I once heard a very wise metaphysician say that we always have to check up on the polar opposites of our emotions and our thoughts. In other words, the opposite of love would be hate. The opposite of peace would be anxiety, stress, depression, anything that is disruptive to our personal peace and contentment. The opposite of kindness would be cruelty, treating others badly in some way. And it is said that we must look at these attributes of love, kindness, compassion, goodness, all things that are of the light, so to speak. These are attributes of the light. They are attributes of God, the great divine spirit. And anything that is opposite of those attributes is not really conducive to our personal peace or well being on any level. And I think that's a really good way to start this conversation because I think we live in a time right now in our world where we always have to check up on what we're feeling, how we're thinking, and is what we're feeling and what we're thinking in direct opposition of those divine attributes. Because the divine attributes are always peaceful and healing, encouraging, and even if it's raining boulders of fire all around us, those divine attributes can just give us the peace and the grace and the poise to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, as the psalmist says, and fear no evil. And so I think it's important when we turn on the news, what do we hear? How does it make us feel? When we watch things on the internet, even people that claim to have a spiritual message, how does it make us feel? Does it make us feel angry when we hear about all these people saying, well, the end of the age, judgment day is coming? Does it make us feel angry or somehow a perverse sense of satisfaction? Like saying, oh, all those bad people are going to get theirs now. I can't wait for them to suffer. If that's how it's making us feel, we are definitely stepping out of the context and confines of divine love and mercy. We're feeling the opposite of those things. Is it making us feel afraid? Well, then it's the direct opposite of divine peace. Is it making us feel hateful toward other people when we hear about bad things happening? We hear a lot of religious folks, if there are earthquakes or tsunamis or a hurricane that hits a certain part of the world and there's widespread disaster and death, they'll say, well, those people were very sinful in that nation or in that city, and this was God judging them. Well, how does that make us feel? Are we agreeing with that? Are we feeling self righteous, like, yeah, they deserved it? Or are we having divine mercy and saying, well, maybe there were some bad people there, but What about the good people that may have perished in this natural disaster? Was this really God's doing? Was this really his judgment? Or was it just something that was a natural occurrence that had devastating consequences? Do we have mercy and pity and compassion toward those people and a desire to help? Or are we standing with the judgmental religionists and saying they got what was coming to them? See, there's all kinds of ways that we can be affected by what we hear. It can make us feel anxious. It can make us feel stressed out, afraid, self righteous, hateful toward other people. And so it's always important, as this metaphysician of old that I mentioned before said, to always check up on the polar opposites. What are we feeling? And is it out of bounds with those fruits of the Spirit, with those attributes of the Spirit that are good and peaceful and healing and merciful and so on and so forth? Because if they're not, we might want to correct the course that we're on, check what we're thinking. We might want to change what it is that we're thinking, what it is that we believe, how it is we react towards other people or certain situations. Because no matter which one of these negative emotions or thought patterns we fall into, there are consequences. Look at people who are always stressed out or bitter or angry or hateful or full of fear. These people generally are not in good health. It takes a toll on their mental health, but it also takes a toll on their physical health. These people are much more likely to have a lot of problems with arthritis, bouts of cancer, lowered immune system. They catch things like colds and flus and viruses much more easy. And if you really look at it, if you know people like this in your life, you'll see that many times they are sick more than the average person, and many of them end up, passing away at a fairly early age, 50s, 60s, sometimes 70s. And even if they live to a good old age, there's no life in them, and they always seem to be wishing for death. I can't wait to leave this world. Everybody I know has passed away. I want to join them. I don't want to be here anymore. I hate this world. I hate this life. It can get very dark. And I've known people that have been in that position and said those kind of things. I had a relative some years ago that passed away, and I mean, she was a really nice person. She would do anything for anybody. She was not mean-spirited or stingy in any way, shape, or form, but she had a lot of melancholy in her life, and she always felt like life was against her, that maybe people didn't love her as much as she wanted to be loved, even her own daughter, her husband. She just felt like life was kind of hard and cold, and she was kind of on her own, no matter how many people were around her. And after she passed away, my family members, we all went to help sort through her, belongings. And there was found several notebooks that she had written in over the years, almost like little diaries. And what was written in those notebooks was absolutely heartbreaking. She would write things like, life is terrible. I wish I were dead. There was one notebook that had page after page written over and over and over again, line upon line. Life sucks, life sucks, life sucks. Hundreds of times. And I say this to give an example of what these kinds of mindsets can do to us. Again, whether it's fear, whether it's stress, whether it's melancholy, whether it's being overly anxious, whether it's even feeling self righteous. There might be a certain adrenaline high in that one. We have this notion, well, I'm on the winning team. I'm on the right political team, the right religious team. But still, that kind of thing creates a bitterness and an intolerance, and even many times a hatred towards other people because they're wrong, they're sinful, they're of the devil, they're not like me, they're not like us, and therefore they deserve any hardship that they might get in life because that's God punishing them. That's the wrath of God in their life. And that can create a very calloused heart and mind. And being one, and you probably get tired of hearing me say this, but being someone who is a former evangelical fundamentalist Christian, I personally have known and know more than a few people who go to church every Sunday, read the Bible every night, pray every day, every night, even wear t-shirts or little sweatshirts in the autumn and the winter time that have scriptures, on them, Psalm 23 or whatever the case may be. But these people have been so judgmental over the years. It seems like they're almost void of love. And even if a family member falls down suffering in front of them, has to be rushed to the hospital and ends up passing away, they'll just look at it and go, "Oh well, they should have took better care of themselves. They should have done this, they should have done that. It's always, just somehow their fault. I couldn't help them." Very indifferent and very quick to point at people no matter how much they're suffering and somehow say, "Well, that's your own fault. You're not living life the way I think it should be lived or the way I would do it. Therefore, you're the victim of your own suffering and death, even if that is not the case." So these are very dangerous mindsets to get into. And again, we always have to check, how are we feeling? What are we thinking? No matter what we're doing, what we're exposed to, what we're watching, what we're listening to, especially in today's climate. There is a lot of fear and a lot of hate that is permeating society, permeating the country, permeating the world. It certainly is nation against nation and person against person in this day and age. And so we really have to be watchful on how we're responding to these things, especially on the inner plane in our thoughts and in our emotions. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? And now we get down to the crux of the matter when it comes to hatred. Hatred and all of the emotions and thoughts that are derivatives of hatred will decay everything and everyone it touches, whether it be hatred, whether it be just the idea of I'm better than you somehow, I have more money, I'm better looking, I have more muscles, I have a better body, whatever the case may be. I'm better than you. Or whether we're just not necessarily hating, but looking at other people as being less than because of their religion, the color of their skin. There's a whole host of ways to look down on others and just view them as being ants or animals. They're not quite up to snuff when it comes to our standards. They're certainly as not as good or smart or rich or athletic or whatever the case may be as I am. So hatred and division can take on a lot of different faces and shades. But no matter what package it comes in, it will decay and destroy everything that it touches. I'm sure we've all had a workplace, or maybe some of you listening right now go to a job every day where the tension in the atmosphere, you could just cut it with a knife. It is always so tense and backbiting. Everybody has a long face. Everybody is feeling under the weather. There's probably more people calling out every day, than the average job where people are more happy. There's more backbiting. There's more backstabbing and gossip. And what usually happens? What usually happens to a business or a company like that? I've never seen it to fail that sooner or later it goes under. It crumbles. It goes bankrupt. It just falls apart. It doesn't do business anymore. Things get very slow. People start getting laid off. And eventually, that place of business will cease to be. It dies, it decays. The same with a family. I'm sure that maybe some of us have come from a family or have seen families around us, or maybe family members where their home life is just so divisive and hateful. A spouse lying, cheating, verbally or physically abusing the other or the children. And what happens? Eventually, it disintegrates and it hurts and taints everyone that this atmosphere touches: the mother, the father, the kids. Everybody, leaves that situation with some kind of complex, some kind of great ingrained fears. They don't trust anybody, or they start being abusive because somehow they think that's the way to be strong. You have to uh, beat down other people around you in some way. And these are usually a lot of the people that overindulge in alcohol or drugs. And you see a lot of people, you know, overdosing or getting into car accidents, driving under the influence. These kinds of emotions and this kind of energy, it destroys who or whatever it touches in one way or another. And we can all, I'm sure, come up with at least one example of that where we've seen that happen in our lives, maybe to us or maybe to someone else, maybe a friend, maybe a company that we worked for. It just never seems to fail. All the hatred, all the discord seems to be like energetic and spiritual termites that just eat away at the foundation and the support of anything that it enters into, and it eventually and inevitably just collapses. And I want to extrapolate that outwards a little bit and think about what is going to happen to an entire country that is filled with the energy and the mindset and the emotion of hate and division. What will happen to an entire world that is filled with so much division and hatred and selfishness and all of that poison that comes from hatred, not loving others, not having compassion, not having mercy. Eventually, that country, that society, that world, just like the place of business, just like the family unit, the foundation will dissolve and decay, and eventually it will collapse. And I believe that this is what Jesus spoke of when he says, we've built the foundation of our home or the house on sand. And when the wind came and the waves, that house did fall, and its fall was great. Because when we build the foundation of anything on hatred and division and selfishness and looking down on others or doing, hurting others, doing whatever we have to do to get ahead, if those are the things we build our life, our business, our family, our neighborhood, our society, our country, and our world on, then everything that we've built on that shifting sand is going to collapse uh, very hard at some point in the future. And this is what you might look at, and some might even say that this is what will bring about the end of the age, as the Bible calls it. Because I've said time and time again in this show, and it's true when it comes to religion, the ancient Christians always taught that prophecy was conditional based on what we do. What is sin? It is missing the mark. What is repentance? Literally, it means turning around and going the opposite way, walking away from where we missed the mark. So we always have that opportunity to turn around and get back to those divine fruits of the Spirit, those divine attributes. And that's what the Bible speaks of when it says, then God will turn and hear us, hear our prayers, and heal our land. Because God responds to the divine attributes when we start living them, walking in them, treating others according to them. See, God is not going to, slap a whammy on us if we make a mistake, if then we realize we've made a mistake and turn around and start doing the right thing. That is basically what repentance is. But see, this is our choice. This is our choice how all of this ends. And that's why it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, that we don't jump on the bandwagon. And again, I don't like to make shows political, and this is not political at all, but again, it's a glaring example of what's happening in our world. I don't care if it's Republican, I don't care if it's Democrat, I don't care if it's black or if it's white. If you're jumping on the bandwagon of other people who are causing division and hatred and who are not coming from a place of those fruits of the Spirit and divine attributes, then you're jumping on the wrong bandwagon. And you will be very disappointed in the end because that bandwagon will crash and burn in a fiery wreck because it's built on the sand. It has no foundation. It's only built on the flawed human thoughts and emotions and nature of hatred and division and selfishness and greed and all of that sort of thing. And there isn't going to be any winner in the end, no matter who you think is going to lead you to victory. If that's what their foundation is built on, whether it be religious or political or whatever the case may be. If that's what their foundation is built on, it's not going to lead anyone anywhere that is good. So, again, when you're thinking about following these people, no matter who they might be or where in the world they might be, check up on how they're making you feel. Check up on what their words and actions seem to be. Are they for unity and peace and equality? Love thy neighbor? Do they stand for things that are stemming from the fruits of the Spirit and those divine attributes? Or are they stemming from things that are hateful and divisive? Look at those fools, look at those jerks. They're the enemies. They're the ones we have to look out for. They're the ones we have to destroy. They're the ones we have to beat. They're the ones we have to oppress. They're the ones we have to get out of our precious country and communities. See, if that's the platform, it's going to collapse. And we don't want to be standing on it with them when it does. We should be the ones trying to talk them down from that platform. And it's free will. If they listen, they listen. If they don't, we can't sit there and seethe with hate and talk about how stupid they are, or when things fall apart, act like the people I spoke of earlier and say, well, good, they deserved it. They didn't want to listen. No, we have to stay in love. And even if these people fall and it crumbles and all that they stand for is swept away, we should have compassion and mercy. And those who survive that collapse, we should still be reaching out and saying, are you ready to take a better way now? I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm a flawed human being just like everybody else, but I'd like to help show you at least a better road we can walk together as we improve together. We never want to be above other people. Look at me. I'm the president. Look at me. I'm some great anointed spiritual teacher, and you should all be my pupils while I'm up on my platform. You know, none of this kind of thing. Remember what Jesus said, those who will be greatest in the kingdom of heaven will be your servant. We are here to serve others, to do God's work. And we serve others by bringing them into the light. Not a religion, not a bunch of condemning doctrines and dogmas that they must follow, but into the way of love, of truly experiencing God in their own personal lives, knowing that there is more than just this, and that we are all brothers and sisters, and we all need to take care of one another while we're here living in this. None of us are getting out of this world alive, and we're not going to take anything with us, and our legacy really isn't going to matter what we think we're going to leave behind, unless it's one where we can look back and say, geez, he or she was a good person, loved others, helped others, tried their best to be an example of Christ in this world. That should be the legacy we try to leave behind. Not towers and pyramids and fortunes and, all of this kind of nonsense that, we think are going to make us important in this world. None of that matters. And all of those kind of goals and aspirations are built on the sand. So remember, check up on the polar opposites. What are you feeling? What is it the opposite of when it comes to the fruits of the Spirit and the divine attributes of God? Always envision within yourself a little meter with a needle, almost like a Geiger counter or some such thing. And if it's in the white, well, look at it, you're in the light. If it starts going over into the black, then it shows you're getting over into the darkness. Hatred, fear, stress, worry, impatience, you know, everything that we feel has its polar opposite. And we need to become more and more aware of that and try to make others aware of that. Because if we don't, the hatred and all of the negative emotions and feelings and energy is going to decay everything around us. And it will take this world into that end of the age. It really is inevitably up to us and what we choose to do. And, sadly, we're either part of the answer or we're part of the problem. And when we're part of the problem, that doesn't mean look at you, bunch of fools, look at you, bunch of idiots. It just means that we're setting ourselves up for a really big fall. Think of the walls of Jericho that came tumbling down. There's an illustration in that somewhere where they thought in the walls of Jericho around this ancient city, they thought was going to protect them from everything. No invader could get through. No advancing army would be able to penetrate those walls and get to their city. They were safe. They could do whatever they wanted to do. And it really wasn't a very nice place. But what happened in the end? Those walls fell down. And all of the stuff we think is going to save us in this world, surrounding ourselves with the hate and the division and the prejudice and all this kind of thing that we can get into. Look at it. It's just the walls of Jericho. And eventually it's going to fall down and we are going to be exposed. So check up on yourself. Always be mindful of what you're thinking and what you're feeling because it really does matter. It matters a lot. And then we need to try to be lights in this world and talk other people down off of those crumbling foundations and platforms. Again, not because we're better than them, but because we truly want to help them and show them a better way. We are their servants. We are servants of God. So I hope you got something out of this today. As always, I really appreciate each and every one of you that listens. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, be blessed, and walk in God's love. And I'll see you next time here on the Infinite Journey.